In 15 years in Hollywood, no one in Hollywood has a memory of going to a sold-out Kevin Hart show, there being a line for him ever getting a standing ovation at any comedy club. He already had his deals when he got here.
Two legends, one target, and a silence shattered for good. Katt Williams and Eddie Murphy. Two names that do not just represent comedy, they are comedy. Between them, they have stacked decades of sold-out arenas, cultural moments that define generations, and a body of work no one in the business comes close to touching. These men have nothing to prove, no reason to lie, no reason to play games. So, when both of them independently start pointing their fingers in the same direction, you have to stop and ask yourself, what do they know that we do not? Because what is happening right now is not just some celebrity beef, it is not jealousy. It is not clout chasing. When Katt Williams sat down with Shannon Sharpe on Club Shay and laid out his case. Pay attention, because by the end of this, you are going to be asking questions you never even considered. Something shifted. The ground moved. Kevin Hart's carefully constructed empire suddenly started showing real cracks. Stay with me. By the end of this video, you will be questioning everything you thought you knew. And some of the answers might genuinely change how you see one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. Let us get into it. Eddie Murphy speaks, and that matters more than you think. Let us start with him. His role in all of this is the part most people are sleeping on. For years, simply years, Eddie Murphy was the definition of unbothered. He stepped away from the spotlight, focused on his family, made the occasional film, and stayed completely out of the messy politics of Hollywood celebrity culture. He did not do feuds. He did not throw shade on Instagram. He did not drop cryptic interviews with pointed jabs. He was just gone. Peacefully, powerfully. That silence by itself was a massive statement. When you are Eddie Murphy, you do not need to prove anything to anybody. Raw is still the #1 stand-up concert film of all time. He had not even been on stage in 27 years, and he was still sitting on top of the mountain. That is how dominant he is. So, when someone finally asked Eddie about Kevin Hart supposedly breaking his box office records for stand-up, everyone expected either a gracious nod or a diplomatic non-answer. That is what you get from someone who has been out of the game that long, right? Wrong. Eddie Murphy looked into that camera, almost amused, and said, "What record? I do not know what record you are talking about. Where did he break it?" And then, with that legendary Eddie Murphy energy, he casually mentioned that he needed to get back on stage. Because he wants his record back. Now, look, on the surface, that sounds like a joke, a funny moment, classic Eddie. But here is what you need to understand. This is a man who measures every single word. He has been in this business long enough to know exactly what he is doing when he speaks on camera. Nothing is accidental. Nothing is throwaway. What Eddie was really saying was this: Kevin Hart's claim does not hold up. I have not even been trying, and I am still ahead of him. It was dismissal dressed up in humor. And in Hollywood, a calm, laughing dismissal from a legend is 10 times more devastating than an angry one. Think about it from Kevin's perspective. You spend years building up this narrative that you broke Eddie Murphy's record. You use it as a cornerstone of your brand. The idea that you are not just successful, you are historically successful. And then Eddie Murphy, the man himself, goes on camera and basically says, "I do not know what you are talking about. That is not just a shot, that is an erasure." And here is the thing that makes it even more significant. Eddie did not need to say anything. Nobody was forcing him to respond. He could have just let Kevin have his moment. The fact that he chose to address it even in that casual way tells you everything. It was a message delivered with a smile, but a message. Now, once Eddie Murphy plants that seed of doubt, suddenly everybody else who had been thinking the same thing feels like they have permission to say it out loud. And nobody had been waiting longer to say it than Katt Williams. Katt Williams, a story that started years ago. Because here is what people forget. Katt Williams was not just randomly coming for Kevin Hart in 2024. This tension goes back a decade. Back in 2014, Katt was already sliding in. References during his sets, subtle at first, but pointed enough that people in the know understood exactly what he was saying. By 2016, the subtlety was completely gone. Katt Williams stood on stage and straight up called Kevin Hart a puppet. Not a rising competitor, not a younger comedian who needed to learn. A puppet controlled, manufactured, not the author of his own story. Now, Katt also challenged Kevin to a $5 million head-to-head comedy battle around this time. Put the money on the table, said, "Let us settle this the way comedians are supposed to settle it on stage, in standing on a stage with nothing but punchlines and sheer timing." Kevin stayed quiet. Let that sit for a second, because there are really only two reasons someone ignores a direct call out like that. Either you are too high above it to care, or you know you cannot win the room. And given that Kevin built his entire public identity on being the most relentless grinder in comedy, the first option feels wrong. True competitors do not back down from a fight. They render it completely harmless by destroying it on stage. The silence spoke volumes. And here is a piece of the puzzle people forget. Back in 2016, Katt actually said sorry for calling Kevin out by name during a set. He hopped on the radio to express his regret. That is not how a bitter troublemaker acts. That points to someone who wrestled long and hard with going public. Someone who stepped back, thought it through, and still felt deep down that something was fundamentally broken. The tension kept mounting. It was bound to spill over. Then came Club Shay and a whole new level of detail. January 2024 arrived. Katt Williams sat down with Shannon Sharpe on Club Shay and broke the internet. He did not just throw random insults. He did not just vent. He laid out a meticulously structured argument. Methodical, specific, and backed up with facts that refused to crumble under pressure. Here is what Katt presented, and every single detail demands your full attention. He questioned Kevin's entire origin myth. Kevin Hart has repeated his grind story on the East Coast comedy circuit endlessly. Philadelphia basement stages, tiny rooms, earning an audience one grueling night at a time. It sounds like a great movie. The ultimate Philly underdog, making it on pure grit. But Katt pointed out a massive chronological error. Kevin claims he was paying dues on the East Coast. Yet during that exact same span, he was permanently based in Los Angeles. And he was not just struggling. He had his own network television sitcom and starred in a feature film called Soul Plane within his first year in LA. Let me put this directly to you. Have you ever heard of any comic moving to LA and landing a network show and a major film in 12 months? Does that sound like a grassroots hustle to you? Does that sound like a normal path up the ladder? Or does it sound like someone walking through doors that were already propped wide open for them? Katt was not saying Kevin lacks talent. His point was that the narrative does not fit the timeline, and the two stories contradict each other. But the most explosive accusation Katt dropped, the one fans still debate today, was even bigger. For 5 consecutive years, every major comedy script that ended up on Kevin Hart's desk had been offered to Katt Williams first. 5 straight years of films, and Katt turned every single one down, not because he hated work or was turning down cash, but because he stood his ground on principles. He demanded rewrites. He refused to lean into lazy racial tropes. He drew a hard line against scenes that compromised his artistic integrity and his identity as a black man in Hollywood. And when he demanded those script changes, when he pushed back against offensive writing, the studio bosses told him no. Those exact same scripts went straight to Kevin Hart untouched, and Kevin accepted every single word without a fight. To be entirely fair, Kevin has answered these kinds of charges before. He told Oprah, way back in 14th, that Hollywood makes overnight success look easy, but he had put in 18 years of quiet work. And honestly, I believe his work ethic is real. Nobody reaches the top tier of comedy purely by accident. The man knows how to grind. I am not taking that away from him. But that misses Katt's actual point entirely. Katt never argued that Kevin was lazy. The real question is who unlocked those doors behind the scenes. And what terms did Kevin have to accept in order to step through them? Those are two completely different discussions. Every time someone tries to steer the interview toward that second question, Kevin pivots back to his work ethic. Why is that? The Diddy connection changed the game. The archival footage that gave this entire controversy an entirely darker tone. Because everything we discussed so far, the timeline glitches, the industry plant labels, all of that lived online as rumors. Then a piece of video surfaced that dragged the entire conversation straight into the mainstream spotlight. Old Diddy footage re-emerged. Back in 2010, Kevin hosted a Las Vegas party for Diddy. At the time, nobody blinked an eye at it. A rising star hosting a music mogul event felt normal. But watching that old footage today hits completely differently. There is a specific clip. Kevin is standing inside a cramped, dimly lit bathroom. A classic celebrity bash. Kevin was climbing fast, while Diddy stayed Diddy. Back then, it seemed normal. But watching that old footage now, people are seeing everything through a much darker lens. There is this one clip. Kevin is stuck in a cramped, dark bathroom. There are women in bikinis and candles everywhere. The vibe in that room feels off. Really off. And at
one point, a woman's hair actually catches fire. It literally goes up in flames. And how does the room react, Kevin's
reaction, and everyone else's, is pure laughter. Not panic, just laughing. Nobody helps her out. Kevin just laughs. Sit with that image for a second. What kind of space treats someone burning as funny? What culture exists in a room where a woman catches fire and the host doesn't even flinch? But that clip isn't even the part raising the hardest questions. There is another moment in that footage where Kevin speaks to the person behind the lens, telling them to keep the camera away from a specific section of the room where Diddy is standing. He gives no reason why, just blocks the shot. The lens catches a quick flash of that corner before turning away. Just a second enough to make people curious. To be completely clear, Kevin Hart faces no criminal accusations regarding that party. I am not claiming he broke any laws. What we do know from federal filings and ongoing investigations is that Diddy allegedly organized private gatherings involving serious abuse. Activities featuring coercion and exploitation documented thoroughly by federal authorities. Kevin wasn't merely attending. He hosted. He set the tone for everyone present. He directed where cameras could point. And when reporters ask him directly about Diddy connections, he dodges every single time, giving zero explanation. No denial of what happened, just silence. Let me ask you this directly. If you hosted an event and later watched the host face federal charges for things happening at those exact gatherings, wouldn't you want to speak up? Wouldn't you try to get ahead of it?
And clear the air for the public. Kevin Hart says nothing at all. In the high-stakes world of public relations,
that Kevin knows inside and out, total silence is deliberate. The pattern is clear accountability. Happens strictly on Kevin's terms. Notice this pattern because once seen, it cannot be unseen. Kevin handles controversy in a very specific way. He avoids speaking early. He stays quiet when issues are small. He waits until pressure peaks, then offers a controlled apology. Always on his own terms. Look at the record. Kevin gets a DUI arrest in Los Angeles for speeding near a fuel truck. He admitted drinking handled it and moved on. Fine. People slip up, but keep that in mind as a start. Later, someone tries extorting Kevin over footage from a Vegas night with another woman while Eniku was pregnant. Kevin rushed to social media to confess, first beating the extortion attempt. Tactically smart PR.
But Eniku later revealed on Netflix that she learned about it alongside the public, carrying his child, and finding out about infidelity via an online post. Think about what that means. His public apology
doubled as her notification. Accountability was just damage control wrapped in an apology. Then, in 2018, Kevin lands the Oscar hosting job, then old homophobic stand-up jokes resurface online. Kevin initially refused to apologize again. He only stepped down after massive pushback, issuing regrets later. See how the cycle repeats. A crisis hits. Kevin goes silent. Pressure mounts. He addresses it only when trapped. Layer that exact playbook over everything else discussed today. The Diddy footage, the industry disputes, and lingering questions about his box office records. Every single controversy follows the exact same script. Publicly, that was how she found out. The world saw it right alongside her. That is not accountability. That is just damage control wrapped in a thin apology. Then, in 2018, Kevin lands the Oscar hosting gig, arguably the most prestigious job in all of Hollywood, and nearly instantly, old tweets and stand-up clips start surfacing again, where he was taking cheap shots at the LGBTQ community. Kevin's first move, he says he has already covered it. He refuses to apologize again. He had to be dragged, truly pushed, before he stepped down from the show and finally offered a real apology. Do you see the cycle yet? It is the same sequence every single time. A problem hits the headlines. Kevin goes
Radio silent or tries to dodge. The heat turns up. Only when he has no other choice does Kevin finally speak out. Now stack that pattern onto everything else we have covered today. The Diddy clip. The drama with Monique.
those rumors about him being an industry plant and that box office record Eddie Murphy seems to have forgotten. Every single one of these stories follows that same tired playbook, and Kevin keeps quiet on every front. The betrayal of Monique the U. It really hits differently. I saved this for now because, honestly, this story affected me the most. It is not about fame records or industry politics. This one is about a person. In 2021, Monique, the Oscar winner and comedy legend, who had been fighting a Hollywood blacklist for years, went on Kevin Hart's podcast Comedy Goldmines and showed real vulnerability. She opened up about everything she was going through, how her career was essentially frozen because of her fallout with Oprah and Tyler Perry. She spoke about how her family was struggling, how she needed someone in her corner. And Kevin stepped up, or at least that is how it appeared. He told Monique she was family, like a mother, an aunt, a sister. He insisted he wanted to help. And here is the part that matters. He did not just say it, he acted. He called Tyler Perry personally on her behalf, and later claimed Tyler was ready to move forward. He told Monique, let's leave. The negativity behind, as they had bigger things to do together. He offered to partner with her executive produce, and said he was in for whatever she wanted. Monique believed him. Why wouldn't she? This was not some vague promise over drinks at a party. He made a phone call. He gave her specifics. She had every reason to trust him. And she did. She told her producers at Endemol about the partnership. Everyone got excited. Having Kevin Hart attached to a project is a massive industry signal. It opens doors. They started gearing up to get her talk show back on the air. Oh, and one more thing. Kevin also lent Monique a significant amount of money during that time. And Monique paid it back with interest. She made sure everyone knew that. This was not a situation where she was trying to take advantage. She upheld her end. 2 weeks later, Endemol called Monique. Kevin's manager Dave Becky had reached out to say Kevin was backing out. Monique called Kevin directly. She needed an explanation. What she got was, "We will talk Tuesday. Don't worry about it." That was over 2 years ago. She has not heard from him since. Why would Kevin do that? Why make those promises call? Tyler Perry, get everyone's hopes up and then vanish. Some believe the answer is Oprah and Tyler. Perry. If Kevin's career depends on staying in the good graces of the most powerful producers in the industry.
And Oprah and Tyler Perry are at the top of that list, then helping the woman they blacklisted is not just risky, it is
Potentially career suicide. If that is true, then Kevin made promises he either knew he could not keep, or promises he never intended to keep. Either way, it is a betrayal of a woman who was already down. I will let you decide what that means, but I will say this: that is not the behavior of the hardest working
man in Hollywood. It is the behavior of someone who says whatever the room needs to hear. The bigger picture. What Catty
and Eddie are really saying. Let's zoom out, because when you put this together, what Katt Williams and Eddie Murphy are doing is asking one fundamental question. Is Kevin Hart's story true? Not is Kevin Hart talented he is. Not does Kevin Hart work hard. He probably does. Not does Kevin Hart deserve some of what he has achieved, maybe. But the story Kevin tells about his rise, that is what is being interrogated. The story goes like this. A kid from Philly, a rough upbringing, found comedy grinding on stages nobody cared about getting. Booed getting humbled, putting in the work year after year until the world had no choice but to pay attention. A pure earned grassroots rise to the top. It is a great story. It is the kind of story that makes people
love you. It makes your success feel like proof that the system works, that hard work pays off, and that anyone can make it. But Katt Williams is saying that story has holes. The timeline does not add up. The
opportunities did not come from grinding. They came from someone else. And the price of those opportunities was a willingness to play by rules that other comedians, specifically black comedians, refused to accept. And Eddie Murphy is the living proof of what it looks like when you do it the real way. He paid his dues. He built his audience. He reached the top on his own terms, and then he walked away on his own terms. And when someone claims they have passed him, he turns around and says, calmly with a smile, I am not sure that is true. That combination, Katt, with detailed accusations, Eddie with quiet, knowing skepticism, is more powerful than either one alone. Because now it is not just one frustrated comedian. Now it is a pattern of recognition from people who know this industry from the inside out. The question for you is, does Kevin Hart owe us answers? Think about it seriously. He built his entire brand on authenticity, on being the everyday guy who made it, owning his failures, his DUI, his infidelity, his setbacks. He sells transparency. He has made hundreds of millions built on an image of absolute authenticity. So, if that image is manufactured, if the transparency is selective, if the vulnerability is a tactic, if the whole story has been edited, what are we actually buying here? The road forward, what Kevin needs to do. Look, let's be fair to Kevin Hart, because fairness matters. He is genuinely funny. He has put in the hard work. He has an undeniable work ethic and a business mind that most people in entertainment simply cannot match. He built a production company, a media brand, corporate partnerships no black comedian had ever touched. That part is real, but real success does not require a fake origin story. Real work does not need to hide behind deflection and silence. Kevin Hart could end most of this tomorrow not by attacking Katt Williams, not by letting his PR team issue a statement, but by actually addressing the specific claims on the table. Address the Diddy footage. Tell people what you saw that night. Tell people why the camera could not go in certain directions. Provide some context. Explain what happened with Monique. Did you make promises you could not keep? If so, why? What happened between that podcast and Dave Becky calling Endemol 2 weeks? Later, respond to Katt and his timeline questions with specifics. If the origin story holds up, prove it. Receipts.
dates, venues. The comedy world remembers everything, and if Eddie Murphy wants his crown back, let him come take it.
Accept the challenge. Get back on stage and remind everyone why you earned your spot. People respect honesty far more than a polished corporate brand. The era of the curated celebrity is collapsing right now in real time. Audiences are too smart, too connected, and too exhausted by being sold a package persona instead of a real person. Kevin Hart staying silent is not protecting him anymore. It is costing him. Every single week that passes without real answers just makes the questions louder. And Katt and Eddie are not the only ones asking. So here is where I leave you, and I genuinely want to know your take. We have Katt Williams, a man with every reason to spin a narrative, yet a track record of telling truths, laying out a detailed case that Kevin Hart's rise was engineered rather than earned. We have Eddie Murphy, a legend with nothing to prove casually, questioning the legitimacy of Kevin's biggest claims. We have footage from a Diddy party that Kevin hosted where bizarre things happened, and Kevin has never uttered a word about it. We have Monique, who was promised backing, believed those words enough to act on them, and was then dropped without a word of explanation. And we have a 10-year history of Kevin Hart only facing controversy when he has zero other choices left. So, I am asking you.
Directly, do you believe Katt Williams? Not the old Katt, but the one who sat down on
Club Shay, with specific dates, specific titles, and claims that remain completely unanswered with facts. Was Eddie Murphy just joking, or was he doing what legends do, saying what they mean behind a smile? And does Kevin Hart owe people real answers, skipping the motivational cliches and the endless positivity talk? Real answers to real questions. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read them all, and I want to know where you stand. Because this conversation goes way beyond Kevin Hart. It is about who Hollywood chooses to lift up what that elevation actually costs, and whether the stories sold to us about success in this industry are ever the full truth. If this video made you think, tap that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach the people who need to hear it. Hit subscribe if you are new, because we dive deep into stories like this every week. Share this
with anyone who thinks they know the whole Kevin Hart story, because after this, they might look twice.
I will catch all of you in the next one.